Hello everyone, my name is Melina and this is
Jordan.
and we are the board certified babies. How's it going?
It's going.
That's good. Have you had a good week?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. We have dog hair on your face.
Oh.
All right. Well,
I get groomed in the middle of the podcast. Oh, look at this. There's more.
oh wait, there's more. Anyways, today we are talking about generalization.
Generalization.
Pretty exciting stuff.
It is.
It's kind of like where we want to end every goal. So
Should have this involved.
yeah. So Jordan, go ahead and break down what is generalization.
Okay. So generalization is talking about the client's ability to show or display the skill that you've been teaching in one setting in other settings that is not the first original setting, including people. So if you taught the client how to tie their shoes, that they are going to be able to do it if the shoe is untied in a different place. So the library with their cousin George, something like that.
Yep.
But that goes with all skills, all behaviors that they're able to do.
Yeah. So like if we do a walking program, we don't want to just be able to have the kid walk with us in the clinic. We want the kid to be able to walk with their mom, their dad, their uncle, their auntie, their teacher, their friend, anywhere.
Yes,
Grocery
ma'am.
store, parking lot, sidewalk, things like that. So,
Yep.
yeah. Sweet.
You name it.
You name it.
All those places. Generalization is one of those really important aspects of what we do that I'm not so sure that everyone spends a lot of time on. Because all of the programming, all the teaching and all that we do should have a level of generalization built into it. And if it doesn't, then we're doing a disservice to the people that we're serving because we're supposed to help them be able to do things without us present.
Yeah.
But if they can only do it with us present in the place that we always do it, yes, it's a good place to start, but it's not the end point. So when you're taking data and it says, yes, they've met the goal at 90% accuracy or 100% accuracy, if you're only measuring it in one spot, you're not going to help them to be successful.
And I will say, as a parent, I think we all feel discouraged when someone's like, well, she does that for me, or she's little angel for me at daycare. We know our and it's just realistic. Your kid's gonna be different with other people. It just is what it is. But there's days where I'm already feel like a terrible mom or something because I've lost my cool, whatever, and I'm trying to vent or something, and daycare teacher is like, well, she was good for me, or she eats that for me, and she don't eat a certain meal or something. So being cautious too of how you tell parents oh, hey, they worked on this today, we're super excited, it was the first time. Not oh yeah, that's weird that they don't do it at home, they do it for us all the time.
Yeah.
That's super discouraging as a parent to hear. And if anything, that's our fault. One thing that I feel the coolest thing as the BCBA here on the case is going back to the food stuff, right? I have a kiddo that we've been working on food flexibility with for not too long, really. So, I mean, I can't even really give us all the credit. But we've been working on it, and now asking mom, how's it going at home? And hearing her be they're willing to try more now. So hearing that is super encouraging and super exciting because, again, the ultimate goal is that they will do it at home with their parents. That's why we're, they're here in the first place and working with us. So yeah, just being mindful of how you deliver news to parents because they might do it with you, but it might not even have to do with you. It might be having to do with the fact they know they're in a building, that there's some sort of instructional control. And so they know they're kind of expected to kind of try things that are a little bit harder. So don't pat yourself on the back for all the hard work, but also humble yourself a little bit.
Yeah. It's a good point.
Sorry, that was a little bit of a tangent.
Don't be sorry. That's what this is for.
Yeah.
We get real about the
being a parent's hard.
Good, amazing work we do and the hard stuff that comes with it.
Yeah.
So, we described what is generalization, and generalization has multiple components to it. The textbook has a list of different ways that you can work on generalization, training loosely, training for common stimuli, like the list goes on. We're not going to get into all that because we could be here for hours giving examples and talking about each one of the different ways. But just as a whole, knowing that generalization is having the goal to help the client be able to do the skills elsewhere other than just with you, and in your setting, whatever that may be. Like, this is important if we are looking at a client or an individual being able to independently function in all of the community home environments that they can be in, right? And that should be our goal. I mean, ABA it should be treated as a short-term solution, right? Like, we should get in there, work hard, train the family to be able to do what it is that needs to be done to help their child or individual be successful. And we should do the same thing and then be able to back out when we're no longer needed. Now, that's different from everywhere, right? Like, there's client variables, parent variables. There's a lot of things that go into that. But we should have the goal of trying to get our clients to be independent, and that's what it takes. You can't be independent with an ABA therapist beside your side.
And two, fun fact, this is random side, again, sidebar. At least I don't know about other states, but in California, when we do our progress reports, we do the Vineland. That's always like the mile markers, kind of like you're kind of showing the developmental mile markers of where an individual is at. I think it's fascinating and kind of cool to just track as we go. Like, if we've had a client that has been growing with us, things like that, they are all questions that should be answered as like, can the child do this independently? So I think it's always helpful to kind of see like also where this is at with parents when we're going, because we might think that a kid is like, oh, they've generalized, and then we do these assessments with these parents and they're like, no. Or sometimes. So anyways, that was also a random tangent, but the Vineland, if you haven't had a chance to kind of like look through it, or your BCBAs have never kind of told you about it, it is interesting. And if there's ever an opportunity for you to kind of take a peek at what that looks like, you can always ask them.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. Those assessments are based on parental answers. So parents also have to be honest. That's another part to it. About whether or not that's something they can do sometimes, usually, or never.
On their own, independently.
Yeah. But that is what we strive for, right? Like, and we strive for that, not in the sense that they need to be able to do everything that we tell them to independently, but what's age appropriate?
Yes,
for
that's
them,
important,
right? So tying their shoes at the age of 3, how many 3-year-olds do you know that can tie their shoes, right? And if you're working on it with them, that's great. But if you're trying to make them or help them to be perfect at it, well, then you got to take a look at the peers at the same age. Generalizing a skill that's not necessarily present in majority or every toddler or 3-year-old around is going to set them up for some potential dangers moving forward, right? Absolutely. Being too advanced, or only able to communicate with adults and no longer children or other kids their age, and things like that. Those all are the side effects of over teaching and not being aware of like the generalization and looking around at the general population at that age.
No, that's actually a really important topic that you bring up. I think this could also be so unique based on like culture and race, ethnicity, all these things. That like sometimes maybe parents misunderstand what the expectation is for a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
I was with a 4-year-old where it's not necessarily normal for 4-year-olds to be able to read everything. And because this specific kiddo is able to read, parents just assumed that was quote unquote normal. So they were actually concerned about the fact that the kid wasn't reading all the time with them. So they wanted us to work on that. And I was like, wait. This is not like we step into a TK classroom. I guarantee you they're not going to be in here just reading novels, you know? So there are things too that I think sometimes there's just like, I think you brought up a really good point. There's just a misunderstanding too of what is like age appropriate for them, and that we want to prioritize that and not things that maybe they don't need to necessarily have in that moment. So I think that's a great point you have.
Yeah, I think especially when it comes to like the academic side of things and school side of things, where kids are going to be placed with other peers, right? You do want to make sure that their client or individual you're serving isn't going to stand out on either side, right? That is too advanced for the classroom or too far behind the classroom. You really want to help them to have the skills that they need to be successful and be in the middle of the class. And that's not to disrespect them or to cut their limits. Yes, you can definitely, absolutely push them. But if they are, standing out, they may be called names like teacher's pet or anything like that, which can also be damaging. So as clinicians, we do need to pay attention to what, their peers are doing in the environments that they're going to be in.
I mean, or if they've been pushed a lot to be perfect, and then feel like anything less than is detrimental, then we're also doing a disservice and hurting that child.
Absolutely. So that's, those are some of the other sides of things when it comes to generalization, that we have to generalize skills that are going to be appropriate for them. And knowing that, because the time is going to come, laying down the foundation for them to be able to do certain things in the future is going to be great. So focusing, if they're young, focusing on those attendings, following instructions, being able to have joint attention, right? Those things are going to lay the foundation to make it easier later. It is a lot harder if you have a 4-year-old that can read novels and trying to tell them like, you can do this at home, but you shouldn't do this at school, right? Like things like that really kind of get in the way, and it's easier just to slow down on the teaching on one area and then increase the teaching on the other. And you may choose to agree. Yeah, you may choose to agree or disagree with us in that stance, and that's perfectly fine. But I always want to be mindful of the fact that, our clients typically have a lot of difficulties in various areas of school, socializing being one of them, and what that looks like to create something or help somebody to stand out either direction, like too high and always with teachers, can communicate well with adults but not with peers, all those sorts of things. When looking at like the generalization piece of what it is that we're teaching, we want to make sure that we're not going to help them to be potentially bullied or hurt, knowing that there are oftentimes difficulties in emotional understanding and recognition, which can lead to some pretty serious things later on down the line, especially if you guys have done any of the research or looked at any of the papers, talking about even like suicide in this population and things like that, because of inability to make friends and connections and those sorts of things, which is really sad and like a scary thing.
And it sucks. And we've talked about this previously as well, where, a lot of people are like, well, we need to just change how everyone else acts. And it's like, yeah, that would be great. We can, with our own child, right? We can instill as much as we can for her to be loving and kind to every person. But that doesn't mean that we can also do that for every other kid that's in my child's class. And so unfortunately, it's like, how do we give them the tools to kind of like help them through that? I mean, again, if you guys have feedback on ways that are realistic, then tell us. But from what we've experienced with the families that we've worked with, is unfortunately you can't control what other people do, what other people say, how other kids are raised. All you can do is really worry about how you raise your own child in the way they treat others. So
yeah, I think that's a really good point. So let's like lead back and not go down that dark path anymore. Be a little bit more fun. No, it wasn't you. I brought it up. So one of the other things to generalization is the expectations, right? So if you set expectations for your clinic setting or the home setting, wherever you're providing services, how are you establishing that those expectations sit even when you're not present and planning for them? That also goes into like generalization, and it's just a different way to look at it. Like, do you plan for this? Is it scheduled? Is there a way to work on this? Have you done a pairing procedure to transition that instructional control or that stimulus transfer, right? So you have to think about those things as well from that aspect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
That's great.
So the other thing too, as we get towards the end of this one, is this, just like everything in ABA, extends so much further than that, and into everyday life, because it happens even with us. Of course, as you guys know, we're married, we have a child. Here we are. She nods her head. So in relationships, there's even ways that we need to generalize.
Right. I think it's I think parenting in general, like having some sort of a basis of like understanding how we want to parent her, how we want to correct her actions, things like that when we're in public. It's really important for us to be on the same page. And if we're not, then it's going to be a hot mess, whether it be to our relationship or to our relationship with her. So I think we've had to kind of like practice. And I know that when we had our first tantrum and breakdown, like at the beach, I was like, it's time to go. It's time to go. Knowing that I've worked on these behaviors with so many children in so many different places, but then it's my own, it's different. So I just immediately was like, we gotta go, like we're done. We're going home. We're done with the beach. She's crying. She's losing her mind. We're done. And so Jordan packed up and he just like let it happen. But then when we got home and he's like, so, no, he's like, we were going to have to work through this, right? Like we're going to have to make a game plan for if things like this happen in public. And so it was a moment for me like, dang it. Yeah, you're right. But it is important, right, for us to be on the same page. Because if I'm like, not practicing the same things that we're instilling at home in the public place, then why would she expect for us to follow through in that way when we're at the beach or when we're at a friend's house or etc. So I think that's one thing that I think of when it comes to like generalization within our relationship as parents. I don't know if you have any like romantically or like just our relationship in general, but that was the first thing that came to my mind.
I mean, I think so. I think in terms of relationships and with us, and is at the beginning to now, I think generalizing that you're the same when you're together as when you are with friends. Of course, there's going to be a difference, like a slight difference, because you're with friends. So maybe you aren't as flirty at that time with them because you don't want to make your friends uncomfortable or things like that. Like there are going to be things that are going to be slightly different, but it shouldn't be so far different to like Destiny's Child, Say My Name. Like you don't even mention like your other partner when they're not around and that sort of stuff. Like you should still hold them to the same status, or have the same feelings.
Or like I get what you mean, like maintaining being appropriate, like boundaries.
Keeping those things, but even more so, like when we are together at home, that we are also we're playful, we have fun, we joke around, we have a good time together. Right, but then we also do the same thing when we're with friends, right? But not in a way that makes them feel uncomfortable. But it also doesn't change us. But also,
you do that on purpose sometimes to make people feel uncomfortable, so it's fine. Yeah.
That is true, but that is not all of the time. But that just tells you I generalize. I'm consistent, and consistency is important, right? So, like in a relationship, you can be consistent. With how you treat your spouse, significant other, and generalize those behaviors across all settings and all people that are around. Yeah. Right, even when they're not there.
Yep. Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It's cool.
I think I just got some brownie points.
Yeah. So, anyways, yeah, generalization. It's great. It's necessary.
So last time you wanted a burrito. Now I want a brownie.
Because you said brownie.
I said brownie points. So
All right. Well,
can you get me a brownie?
yes, I'm definitely okay with that.
All right, cool.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for tuning in to our episode about generalization. If you don't ever hear that word in your workspace, maybe you should bring it up, ask your BCBA, wonder why you aren't working on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And until next time, we'll see you soon.
See you guys.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in.